Welcome back to This Was Supposed to Be Easy, your go-to podcast for connection, joy, and a good dose of laughter.
Hosted by two friends who've seen enough of life to know that it's never as simple as it sounds
or looks.
Each conversation celebrates the diverse journeys we travel, the moments of bravery, the strength we didn't know we had, and the joy we find along the way.
Because let's be honest, life is full of things that were supposed to be easy, but turned out to be harder.
And definitely funnier
than we thought. This is Amy.
And this is Cheryl. And if it were easy, we wouldn't be here. Amy, we're both sort of feeling a bit like we want to talk about the holidays. And both you and I have had a series of back to back, very big time consuming events and experiences. And I remember the other day texting somebody and saying, when this final big one is over, I just want to crash in front of the TV and watch a Hallmark Christmas movie, like just one of those, you know exactly how it's going to go and end, but you get to see lights and hear songs and all the things. And so I guess that means all of our listeners also get to hear us talk about holiday kinds of conversations and topics for the next, for the next few episodes, potentially.
Yes.
And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, when my kids were little and I would go to the parent events at their preschool program and things like that, there would always be speakers that came in November, December, talking about stress and stress around the holidays and what you can do to relieve the stress or eliminate it before it starts. I will say that today I'd like to talk about what happens sometimes when the holiday arrives and maybe you have a lot of family nearby or semi-nearby or in the state. But maybe this happens with people who have out-of-state family too. But this feeling that you have to see everybody on the exact day of the birthday or of whatever the holiday is. And maybe let's just talk a little bit about what that feels like and maybe some of the gifts that we received when people told us we could let that go as the parent of the children and everybody wanted to see the children and how we were able. I want to talk about how I was able to feel magic in different, slightly altered traditions.
Yeah, I think those altered traditions are definitely important to talk about. And I also think to even add on to that of letting go of the obligations that we sometimes feel the need to recreate every year and enjoying what is versus what's expected.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes there can be a real gift in that experience.
Yeah. So I feel like I might have a couple of different perspectives on this topic, mostly because I have a lot of memories. And also, I'm now in this place where I'm an empty nester. And really, while I don't have grandchildren, I really want to be flexible. I want to be that flexible person who doesn't make someone else feel obligated.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking we'll get around to all of those pieces. But what if we start by sharing, maybe as a child, even a child or as a parent of children, what were some of our holiday traditions? And I'm not saying to share like a negative or a positive, but just like what were some of the things you remember?
So let's talk about fall and winter holidays because I think
Okay.
that throughout this whole conversation, that those are important because I almost blur the three of Thanksgiving. We in my family we celebrated Christmas and Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then New Year's
New Year.
Eve as
Mhm.
like a big circle of like you could have almost circled them all on the calendar as like one long because by the time we added in all of the things we had going on between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it was like that was a month-long holiday, in some ways
Mhm. Mhm.
in my house. So, all of that being said, I remember Thanksgiving being one of my favorite holidays because I love a big traditional Thanksgiving dinner. Like, I
Mm.
love the turkey, the stuffing, the mashed potatoes, but now as an adult, I look at that very differently.
'Cause you have to do the
I
cooking.
know, I right, exactly. I will share you how I've modified that holiday as now an adult because it is different in my mind. And yes, and then so for Christmas, we actually did something a little bit different. We had every other year we rotated. So one year would be in Michigan, and then the next year, my grandparents had a condo in Florida. And so every other year we would go to Florida. So some years we'd have the very white Christmas, you know, the white snow and well, yes, at that point I feel like we always had snow on Christmas for the most part. Now these days I don't always feel like we have snow in on
Right.
Christmas, but I remember one year the kids going out and riding their bikes on Christmas Day, which was also very enjoyable. But we would do kind of the traditional Michigan-based Christmas, and then we would do a very Florida-based Christmas, which looked different, but had a lot of similar things. And then New Year's was always an interesting holiday as well because we were always at home. My parents were not the, like, go out for New Year's. And then I remember being a little bit older as a teenager, and I would start when I wanted to start spending New Year's with my friends and be out of the house, and then the rules that kinda went along with that, like, I was allowed to go out on New Year's, but I had to stay wherever I was. Like, I couldn't my
Mm,
parents' big thing was that you couldn't be driving on New Year's Eve. So, once we got to whomever's house or who was having a party or an event, we stayed there for the night, and that was kind of the
yeah,
rule, and really that's the way it went, and now as a parent of teenagers, we've kinda done something similar with our own children as well, and
mhm,
for for that one specifically.
yeah, yeah. So when I think about my childhood, so taking myself back to childhood, I did grow up in Michigan. We were sort of in the center of Michigan, and my father's family was over on the West Coast in Muskegon, and my mother's family was in the greater Metro Detroit area, Royal Oak. My, at least my memory, because we always
We
might
modified those
remember things
things, those crazy
in
brain
different
tumors.
ways.
Yeah.
My memory is that what happened was the families would flip-flop every other year. So I don't always know what happened when we weren't there, right? If we did Thanksgiving with Muskegon, then we did Christmas with Royal Oak. And then the next year we would do Thanksgiving with Royal Oak and Christmas with Muskegon. It was kind of like every year which holiday the grandparents got swapped. And then of course, inside of that bigger family, if I was in Muskegon, my Aunt Louise had the big fun house and everybody gathered there on that day. So there was this flip-flopping kind of plan. Whereas when I raised my own children, we literally lived right next door to Kevin's parents, and my parents lived 20 minutes away, across town. And so it was a very different sort of scenario, but at the same time, for whatever reason that I consider a positive reason, we it was off the table that you were going to drive between houses on the holiday. Like wherever you were for the day. I didn't have to think about long weekend trips to other places, which is now different because I live up north. But if we woke up Christmas morning at our house and did things with our stockings and whatever, then we either went to Kevin's parents or my parents. And yes, we had some Florida holidays too, because my parents did have a retirement place in Florida. And I have an uncle in Florida. So there were those kinds of things. At some point, I'd love to talk about how Thanksgiving, you started by talking about you love the big dinner and all of that. Thanksgiving always felt a little less obligatory and a little more flexible than maybe the winter holiday felt. But I want to talk about, how that transitioned when I had kids, and what felt really fun for me, having people close by too. So,
Well, okay, so let's start off with the kind of the Thanksgiving holiday. I know for myself now, I alluded to it looks a little bit different. In some of the ways that it looks different is that we go out more than we stay in and cook. And
I forgot
we
that, but
do, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we did it was because I remember one year my mom really wanted to have the big traditional Thanksgiving dinner at my house because so my holidays oftentimes for Thanksgiving specifically are with on the day are my mom, who is single, and my sister and my sister's husband, Jeremy, myself, and the 3 kids, so there's, like, 8 of us on that day, and what was where we were kinda struggling is we would stay in and I remember one year my mom's like, "Let's do the traditional Thanksgiving dinner." It was like $300 in groceries for the 8 of us. We ended up with so many leftovers. Jeremy and Carter have a slew of allergies that I was trying to cook around, but not everybody wanted the food made the way that they could eat it. And so then by the end of it, and literally like every pot and pan in my house was used, then we had to clean up, which was so it was like a 7-hour production to the point where I was like, this kind of sucks. I'm exhausted. And there was not the magic in it that I had once remembered. And so then we kind of started saying, hey, let's go out whether it's, like, the really fancy hotel that's doing a holiday buffet or, or a plated meal somewhere, but we could probably get us all to eat for less than 300
Mhm.
at that point, I mean, I know prices, inflation, all that, but then we could go home and play games, and we could go home
Yeah.
and do something together as a family, which is what we really wanted to be doing something together anyway. Because we're not really the sports people, but my brother-in-law is. So, like, we could this way all be together and he can watch football, or my kids enjoy watching football now too. So, like, we can be doing some of those things together collectively but we don't have and I know for some people that and my mom included, that was really hard to let go of all of the leftovers, but we've still worked it out to have some leftovers in that
No,
capacity, so there is something to be said
uh,
for
y y
minimal leftovers, not so many leftovers that I don't have enough room in like, we joke in Michigan, if you are not a Michigan person, this might be a little different for you, but if you are a Michigan person, we talk about the excitement of when the weather freezes that our garage becomes an extended refrigerator. And so it's cold out in our garage, so we would start then, like, storing stuff in the garage that didn't have to be really refrigerated. Like, it was just too much. It was too much.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Well, I have to like your leftover story. This is connected to nothing except leftovers, right?
yeah.
Except that I remember the year my mother-in-law asked me to make the turkey and a couple other things. Cheese ball, probably the cheese ball. And and I did, and I brought it to her house. And then I she had a turkey cooking in her oven and she had a cheese ball in her fridge. I'm like, "What is this?" And she's like, "Well, I wanted leftovers." And you're gonna have your own leftovers. And I'm like, wait, so you made everything that you asked me to make so
Right,
you could have the leftovers? We could have had a conversation
right. I
about
could have made a
this.
slightly bigger turkey and left half the
Yeah,
leftovers with you.
yeah. When I opened the door to this conversation, please, I want to remember that one of our goals for this topic is I think flexibility is always somewhere in our conversation, right? But are you in a position where you need the gift of it doesn't always have to be the same, or are you in the position of maybe offering the gift of, hey, it's okay if, we do something a little bit different. Whatever that might be, but because we're talking about Thanksgiving right now, I just was thinking about the evolution of how that's looked for me from being a child where my grandparents were were out of town, so wherever you went, you were there for the whole weekend.
Right.
It was Thanksgiving here or Thanksgiving there. And then getting married and living within 20 minutes of both families and both sets of families. Once we had children, how do we modify this? Like, how do I not let my parents see the kids because we're choosing to be at Kevin's parents, and they're so close. What are they going to do? Kind of thing. And so there was this beautiful time period where my siblings were, some of them were, I think, were still in college. At one point, my brother moved away for a couple years and then came back to do grad school. And so for this little period of time, we had this great modification of Thanksgiving, I'll say, which my mom watched my kids a few days a week. And so I would drop the kids off there on Wednesday morning, go to work for a day or half a day or whatever it was. And by the time I would come back Wednesday afternoon, Taylor was 3 cans deep into smoked oysters and, had been setting up with my mom all day and wearing a little apron and all the things. And all of, my young adult siblings, my kids at that point in time maybe were the only 2 kids, or at one point Bear was around, so there were 3 kids with my nephew. We would all collect at my parents' house on Wednesday. And Wednesday night would literally just be hors d'oeuvres. It was smoked oysters and olives and pickles and squirt cheese and, your townhouse crackers, maybe a few other things. And we would just feast and play and have fun all Wednesday night. And we would have a big old sleepover and spend the night Wednesday. And in the morning, snack more on the hors d'oeuvres before we packed up and left. And then we would, have Thanksgiving Day at Kevin's parents' house. It was so fun. It was such a fun tradition to have that, that big slumber party in my parents' house and, let the kids, have fun and watch that grow. And then life changes, things happen. Now my parents move up north to Mackinac. And what we've been doing for quite a few years now is that, I have siblings in Arizona. I have, sibling in Washington. And so we don't see them on Thanksgiving. But my brother lives in Michigan as well. They tend to do something at their own house or with my sister-in-law's family on Thanksgiving Day. But because my dad's up in Mackinac, what has happened for many years now is that, on Friday morning, wherever any of us are, maybe after Black Friday shopping, we pack up and we head to Mackinac. And then we just have the weekend up in Mackinac where there might be art show or a craft show, shopping event in Petoskey that we go to, or we literally might just be in my dad's house playing board games and card games and eating the oysters and the cheese and the crackers and all the things. And we don't have to have a turkey there because we all had turkey somewhere else. And we made sure my dad, that some of his local friends, what they often do, will find a church that's doing a turkey dinner. And so the older people will, go to a church for Thanksgiving dinner and then gather for the rest of the weekend. So I just really love that idea that Thanksgiving has had these really special traditions, but they aren't permanent, last forever. I mean, Amy, you and I, for the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I've been back down at my in-laws' house for Thanksgiving Day because I knew I wanted to be in Mackinac for the rest of the weekend.
Mhm.
And Taylor's convinced us to do the turkey trot.
Yes.
And, so bright and early Thanksgiving morning, neither of us run, Amy. We don't even hike, but a couple of our friends have joined us and we go to this turkey trot and we walk through the woods. Taylor does her run and then she turns around and runs back and finds us and walks with us the rest of the way. But it's a newer thing that's been added on to what happens for me, at least that weekend.
Yeah, and I have really enjoyed being able to do that, and we usually within our weekends, kind of the weekend going into it, my sister and I do a lot of Black Friday shopping. It was kind of years ago, it was actually we would go Thursday morning because some of the stores would do Thursday morning, shopping, and so we would do that and be back before anyone was ever really awake. We would get up and go,
Mhm.
and I was never a Black Friday shopper when I was younger, like, "Oh, the
Me
deals were so
either.
amazing," but it was just
Yeah.
kinda fun. It was kinda fun to get up and go out, and then usually on Saturdays, we go to my in-laws' house, and, we would especially do that when the kids were younger and do family kind of for the same reason that you said your brother had, his family and multiple that was, something that was really kind of that different level of progression from when you go to, let's say, grandparents, and now, like, your parents are the grandparents, so
Right.
that is a different level of getting together, and so we still wanted to have some of those, but now we are in the process too of modifying to my children or some of my children have people that are really important in their lives that they wanna be able to see on certain holidays and spend time with.
Mhm.
And so that flexibility of saying like, "Okay, we can do that or we can do this here." But like I said, too, with my husband's birthday, we've had to look at all of the holidays and make sure we're doing something to kind of tie in depending on the way that the year hit to tie in his birthday as well, so he's not giving that up over the course of a weekend. And there is a lot of juggling, but fun too when you can kind
Mhm.
of do it without that Thanksgiving dinner has to be between 4 and 6, and then we're doing this. We've had a lot of fun in the flexibility of it.
Yeah, and I remember discovering that you and I think Margaret is another person that goes out for
Yeah,
Thanksgiving, at least often, and I remember discovering that was a possibility. Like, that was never on my radar until, just much more recently that, "Oh, wait, some people go out on this day?" I love the idea of, like, just hearing what other people do.
mhm,
And we're talking about our own holidays, and I heard you say, my family celebrates Christmas, and we're not trying to exclude other holidays, right? We're just talking about the experiences we've had and how nice it is when you can learn, "Oh, there's an idea," or "We haven't done that," or "What if?" I remember working with somebody who I think they were in one of the timeshare, maybe the Hilton Club, Vacation Club, or whatever, and they literally went to Disney every year and had all the presents they ordered shipped to whatever the condo unit was in Disney, and I was like, "Oh, that's different." But for them, that became part of the magic of their holidays, right?
right,
I remember being in Muskegon and hearing some of the older teenagers, young adults sitting around the table later in the evening and going, "Hey, what movies are out?" And there would be this group that would pick up and go to the movies, and to me, at least at that phase of my life, it was like, "They're going to the movies on a
right,
holiday." But now one of the things that my immediate Kevin Walker Taylor and I do is go to a Christmas Eve movie. Like, that is our Christmas Eve tradition. Whether we're in Mackinac, whether we're in Mount Pleasant, wherever it is that we go to the movies, except for maybe that COVID year, we watched a Netflix movie that was new. But we go to the movies, we either get Chinese takeout or we eat out if we've timed it right and the restaurants aren't closed. And that's a fun, not really like big obligatory, lots of work thing that we can look forward to. So love, love, love just hearing people's ideas and thinking about, oh, there are other ways. We
yeah.
don't have to be locked in.
Right. Well, and for us, Christmas Eve so when the kids were really little, in fact, this is kind of a good story. So the first Christmas, Jeremy and I were together and married, I think. So I actually no, I think it might have I'm trying to remember those first few Christmas years all blended together,
Yeah.
in my brain. But I remember one of the years we were together and we went to Jeremy's mom's house the night before, stayed the night there. He had a new to him car that was very fancy, and we had a snowstorm, and that car was not a Michigan car and had no business driving in a snowstorm.
Well, I heard him say I had no business owning a car, and that might be the same one.
It probably was, yes, but we were 21 and, all those things. So
You gotta be 21,
right,
right?
exactly, and so we drove then what should have taken us 2 hours, took us 4 because of a snowstorm, because I remember, like, bawling that we weren't gonna be with my family on Christmas Day, and that was the first time that that had ever happened. And it was weird. It was a very awkward, like, almost, "Oh, yeah, now we have to make choices of what this is gonna look like, and or we're gonna end up spending 4 hours of our holiday in a car or longer."
Mhm.
And then I remember, I think the next year was one of the years that my extended family was in Florida, and he wasn't able to come with us, even though he had before or something. And so I remember I had spent the week leading up to Christmas until Christmas Day in Florida. And then on Christmas Day, I flew back to Michigan to be with him, which was different too. I had never traveled
Yeah.
on the actual holiday
Mhm.
before. And then we would, so trying to kind of make all of these things work. And then once we had kids, and I think we did it with Ella, so it was before the boys, we did the whole like get up travel, like Christmas Eve with Jeremy's family, Christmas Day with my family. What does that look like? How it looked all different. And it didn't feel enjoyable anymore with like now I have this baby who's completely stressed out, and especially when she was a toddler and she just wanted to play with her stuff, and she was so off of her routine by the end of the day. So what we ended up kind of doing once the boys came along is we changed it up so Christmas Day, anyone can come to our house that wants to, but we don't go anywhere. So any
Mhm.
family, any friends, we are open. We have had visitors from all over that have come Christmas Day, but we do appetizers all day
Mhm.
long and veggie trays and fruit and all of that type of stuff, but we don't do any type of formal meal and just eat and stay in our pajamas all day, and it's awesome.
I
And
love that.
yeah.
I love
Yeah, we
that.
play games, we rotate stuff, but it's also been really positive to then let the kids who have people in their lives too to say if they were like, "Hey, can I go to, my girlfriend's grandparents?" Yep, go ahead. In fact, actually even more recently, the last few years, Ella's been working at a Chinese restaurant, and so she's been working on Christmas Day because it is their like busiest. So now more often than not, we've ordered Chinese food in the evening, which some years
Mhm.
it's so busy, we've been told like it's a 2.5 hour wait. Like, so now sometimes
Whoa.
what we'll do is we'll send our order when Ella goes into work and say, like, hey, put it in around 3 or 4 o'clock whenever you start getting busy, and then we'll come pick it up. But we've just adapted where then now we can see my in-laws. We always pick and I have to thank them too for the flexibility in that we have started just picking a day, usually a Saturday, usually the Saturday before or after, kind of what's closer, and get together with them and my brother-in-law and his daughters and things. And so we have a fun day with them that's not immediately Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
Right, because it's not the number on the
No,
calendar. You wanna be with people, you wanna have fun with the people that you enjoy or that you love or, it doesn't matter if it's on Saturday versus Thursday or
right.
the 25th versus the, whatever, or say you're in a household that celebrates Hanukkah and Christmas because of, 2 different parents and their own traditions that they're trying to merge and meld or any other number of holidays, right? Like, I love what you're saying about we can pick a day to get together.
Well, and it's more enjoyable too, because I think it's kind of what you were saying with Thanksgiving for your family a little bit. You can be fully present in the moment then with those people that you are with for that day
Yeah.
versus, okay, we're here until 2 and then we have to drive halfway across the state to hit the next family's meal. And it's one of the things that as we've developed this over the years and as my children continue to get older, I hope I'm able to offer them the same grace in that, like, okay, this is what we're doing. We'd love to see you. And what day can we all get together if you can't do that day? And then, like, let's work that out. Because I think, too, what we've also done then over the years is we've invited people who we like, since I've said, like, on Christmas Day, we just open it up to everyone. We've had people that maybe we're gonna be spending the holidays alone or something like that, that have been able to come over and enjoy playing games and eating and all of those things with us too, but we've been able to modify it. And so I really do enjoy that flexibility because then being fully present and also letting go of the expectations of I expect it to look like versus what it is. And it's just really enjoyable that way.
I feel like you've just put the bow on the package, right? This, offering ourselves as the adults grace in not having to be perfect, not having to do something an exact way, the grace of being flexible and remembering to offer others grace and think about what expectations am I putting out there that I maybe could shift a little bit to allow someone else to enjoy their time with me more.
Mhm. Well, and one of the things that I have done too that I think is important is I've started asking the people that I do spend holidays with on the years that feel a little like this will probably be one of them, and that I'm wearing a lot of hats right now. You and I have both talked about like what we're kind of coming off of and going into. I can't do everything. So, but asking the people in my life, like, what is one thing that feels like it wouldn't be the holidays without? And so when I asked
Mhm,
that question, I was shocked. I asked it I think 2 years ago, and all 3 of 2 of the 3 kids said our matching pajama tradition. And it was funny because my husband was like, "I don't wanna do matching pajamas anymore." And they had said the matching pajamas are the and taking a Christmas picture with them in the matching pajamas is like, I love it. It's what I wanna do. In fact, my daughter gets excited she's helped me pick out which pajamas they were all looking at pajamas last week, and they wanted to make sure there was a matching pajama or bandana at a minimum for the dog. Like, in fact, when we got her in May, they had said, like, "This year we get to dress Rue up like our family. We have to pick Christmas pajamas that she can wear some too." Like, that was so important to them. And so I think asking the people around you or even making a list, whether that be friends, family, whatever, like, what is the one thing that you really enjoy doing and prioritizing doing that one thing for each person? Like, what feels special to you? So is it doing the drive on Christmas Eve to look at Christmas lights? If it isn't, then don't do it. Or if it is for somebody, then that's what you prioritize. And so I think going through and kind of saying like, all right, everybody gets one or two things. What are we doing this year? But then that's also opened up the opportunity for us to try new things where we've had people within our family that have said, like, you know what, I really want to try making this recipe, or I really want to, because we kind of do the same thing with food. What's something that you really want to have this year? And I know at one point my mom was like, I really want to have a traditional ham dinner on Christmas Eve. Okay, great. Let's do that then for Christmas Eve. And then what can we do a little bit different for Christmas Day? And doing those types of things to say, like, what is important to you or as each person has really kind of helped the finite and the overabundance of things as well. Like, so then if you don't do the Santa Claus visit, that's okay. But if it's important to one person to do the Santa Claus visit, then that's their priority and that you make sure it happens as a family or whatever. So I've liked being able to do that a little more this year. It kind of feels almost like that boundary setting. I say this year, but I look forward to going into this year doing it because we have done it for the last few years.
yeah, and I think that's a perfect way for us to tie this off, which I said, I love hearing what other people do because there's so many things I never thought about doing or didn't realize people enjoyed or experienced, and that's such a perfect question for our listeners.
Yes.
What is something you enjoy doing that makes any given holiday that you're experiencing or participating in magical for you or enjoyable for you? And or what's that food item?
I know we gotta hear about the food too, because that's one of those special things. Thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep the conversation going because life may not be easy, but listening in should be.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering.